Bailey!
Hey, James! Have you ever heard of vaccination?
Isn't that what's on this frying pan?
No!
Okay then.
Hello! Today, we're going to go on an exciting adventure through the topic known as vaccination.
I love adventures, but James, what is vaccination?
That's a good question, Dorian.
See, on this amazing adventure, we're going to learn that vaccination is a method of artificially acquiring immunity to a pathogen, and this is usually done through injection.
The vaccination will usually contain a weakened version of the pathogen.
So wait, would this vaccination stimulate a primary response?
Of course it does.
But what is this response?
You see, Bailey, if you bother to pay attention in class, it's where a small amount of antibodies is produced after the first encounter with the antigen, which is a weakened form of the pathogen, and is contained in the vaccine. There is also a large amount of antibodies produced shortly after the primary response, and this is known as the secondary response.
The secondary response is usually brought about by a second encounter with an antigen, which is basically a weakened form of the pathogen.
Does this encounter with the antigen have to be natural?
No, don't be a fool. The second or secondary response, Bailey, does not always have to occur with a secondary injection. It could occur with only one injection. So,
I see.
oh, do you think vaccines are good or bad?
Yeah. Of course they're good.
Are you
People
sure they're
die
not?
if they are killed.
But
Well,
see,
you have to realize,
vaccines
vaccines
kill people. Vaccines do kill people. It's been proven. Allergic
Yes.
reactions, or when the dose was improperly administered, or when the vaccine was improperly processed.
Yes,
Okay.
however, vaccines also are great for the economy because they prevent epidemics.
Well, you have to realize as well, you're injecting someone with the virus. Say if the measurement goes wrong, and
What
you
are
put
the
too
more-
much, you put too much of the virus in. What happens what happens when all these people are gone with typhoid when they didn't have typhoid? And you put a typhoid injection into them.
Yeah, but what the hell do I respond to that?
I believe you respond.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get out your pencil and paper.
Because it's time to graph!
I love
As with all graphs, begin by drawing and labeling the x and y axes. On this graph, the x-axis is labeled time per days, and the y-axis is labeled concentration of antibody. Now write in the units for the x-axis: 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. Begin drawing the graph with the x-intercept. This is roughly around 5 days. The curve should now slope up to a local maximum of about 1/3 of the y-axis, and this maximum should occur between 10 to 15 days on the x-axis. The slope should now gradually slope down until it is at about 1/100th of the y-axis, with the x-axis between 35 to 40 days. The curve should now rapidly slope upwards until it reaches roughly 80% of the y-axis, and the x-axis coordinates should be between 50 to 55 days. The curve may now slope down more slowly, beginning to level off at about x equals 60 days, and the curve should not go below 2/3 of the y-axis. Label the first peak on the graph the primary response. Label the second peak on the graph the secondary response. Yes, Bailey messed up here. The graph now shows that the primary response is the production of a relatively small amount of antibodies after the body comes into contact with an antigen. The graph also shows that the secondary response occurs several weeks after the primary response, for example, when an actual microorganism re-enters the body. In this case, a large amount of antibodies is produced to combat the microorganisms in the body. Alternatively, a second vaccination, known as a booster shot, can be used to cause the secondary response. Now, because all graphs should have an underlined title this graph a representation of the human body's response to antigen over a period of time as measured by concentration of antibody. Don't forget to write your name and to write down the date.